Hello everyone, Hobbyist here, back at it again with another board game tutorial. This time, we are going to be covering Betrayal at House on the Hill, 3rd edition. Whether you're brand new to this game, or you've played 2nd edition, or even have played so far back as the 1st edition of this game, there's definitely a notable number of changes to where it would be best advised to kind of go over that for experienced players, in addition for the tutorial for newer players. And generally, I would cover a component overview section of my board game tutorials, but Betrayal at House on the Hill is notorious for having a huge number of tokens representing the 50 different haunt scenarios that you can find yourself in. Therefore, I've decided to just opt out of that and kind of now just transition into the setup and how everything works. So, altogether, inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, there are going to be 3 books that are inside of the box. This will be important towards setup instructions, so let me just go ahead and explain them. You first have your usual rule book that is going to explain everything as far as like how the game plays and stuff like that. But you have 2 other books that you need to be aware of. Both of these are haunt books that specify the various haunts that are inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, and they separate into 2 teams. You have the Secrets of Survival, meaning that on that specified hero team, they're going to be the ones who are going to be working inside of that book, depending on the haunt scenario, and you do not touch this book at all until that haunt scenario begins. On the other side, depending on the scenario that you are in, you also have the Traitor's Tome, which is going to have all sorts of information on various monsters, and of course other scenarios that you can play through as well. And you also do not read either of these books before the haunt begins. Therefore, when you first start, you're going to set these off to the side. Again, you're going to forget about them until later on. There are a total of 12 characters that you can play as, but they work very differently. If you want to get uber technical, there are only 6, but each side of the pentagrams for each characters are double-sided, to where each has their own stat, but they're all relatively the same as far as they represent the same figure. After you choose which one that you're going to choose, whether it be on your front, on your back, you're going to then attach tiny clip markers to each of the sides of your character. Once you have attached your clips to each side of your stats on your character board, you are going to then set each of the levels on the clips to a different green number on the board. These green numbers are going to represent your starting stats. Inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, there are things that are going to increase or decrease your stats depending on what happens, and the clip will move up and down accordingly. Also inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, there are 8 dice. 6-sided dice, however, they are very different from your typical dice. Instead of being numbered 1 through 6 like a normal dice, it specifically has 2 2s, 2 1s, and 2 blanks. So it is very possible to roll a 0 with these dice, and you're going to set all 8 of them on the side for all players to be able to reach. Next, you are going to then separate each of the 3 decks that you're going to primarily use inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, which classify into Omens, items, and events. All the symbols that you see here on these cards may or may not be on a tile when we later get into the exploring the rooms part of this video, and all of these symbols are going to play an important role later on. But you're going to simply just separate and shuffle them into face-down piles. Inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, you're going to place the monster reference card and the Traitor reference card face up on the table within sight of all players who are joining in. The monster symbol that you see on the right is going to play a role inside of the haunt tomes, more specifically with the Traitor's tome, if the scenario requires it. Same with the Traitor's reference card. There may or may not be a traitor, which I'll explain later on. Inside of the 3rd edition of Betrayal at House on the Hill, each player is going to receive a player reference card. This is going to be your easy reminder of everything that you can do prior to the haunt beginning, which is on this side, starting with on your turn you may, and then starting the haunt all the way at the bottom. And then the back of the card is going to tell you how everything is going to work once the haunt begins, assuming that there is one with a traitor or anything like that, and is going to give you tips on the haunt as well. Inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, you are going to use the 3 starting tiles, which are indicated by this house symbol with the L on it, to be your starting layout of your house. There are 3 levels inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, with various tiles that can go into that area to further explore the house, which are, this strip is the ground floor, this tile is the basement, and this tile is the upper floor. On the back of the various tiles inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, there are going to be highlighted in either one of or more than one of these different categories. So you would simply place your ground floor strip down on the board with the entrance facing away, like such. And then separately, you're going to place your basement and upper landing tiles. The remaining rooms that exist inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill are just going to be shuffled and placed in a face-down stack, as this is going to be the primary means of exploring the rest of the house. Inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, this game is primarily for 3 to 6 players, meaning 3 is the bare minimum, and 6, of course, being the maximum. For each explorer that is inside the game, depending on who was chosen, they are all then placed at the entrance hall location of the house. A primary change between the 2nd and 3rd editions, normally you would have to consult a matrix and you wouldn't really know why it is that you're at this haunted house to begin with. But inside a 3rd edition of Betrayal at House on the Hill, you have 5 scenario cards that the players should really discuss and review. However, the important thing is to keep the opposite side of these all face down whenever you are discussing which haunt scenario that you are going to try out. So, you get to choose between paranormal investigators, you get to choose between cursed, strange disappearance, for sale, or a mysterious invitation. And once you have chosen a specific scenario, the rest go back in the box. The next step that you're going to do is that the number tracker here and the pointer here, starting at 0, is going to also sit off on the side of the board. This tracker is specifically used for tracking the number of omens that are inside of a game, but they can also play a role inside of various haunt scenarios. Ultimately, whenever you successfully complete all your setup steps, this is what your play area should look like when it is all said and done. Trail at House on the Hill, it has a very unique way that it determines who goes first inside of the game. It simply states that players check their character boards to find their character's birthdays. The player whose explorer has the next birthday will take the first turn of the game. Play will then proceed clockwise from that player. Inside of our specific example of Betrayal at House on the Hill, it would be that Joseph Hooper would be the first player. So, a couple things that I need to go over first to kind of give some understanding of how the rest of this game will play out is kind of going over each of the individual stats as a whole. So, on the left side, if we were to split this character board in half, is all of your physical traits. Might and speed all encompass those physical traits, and whenever physical damage takes place, those are the two traits that are going to be affected. As I mentioned earlier, the green numbers are your starting stats, and can fluctuate over the course of the game, whether they be increased or decreased. But during the first phase of the game, before the haunt begins, it is physically impossible for your character to die. At most, they will hit these red numbers that are on the stats, and they will be indicating the critical state of a character. Meaning that during the beginning phases, if something were to cause damage, the most that it could do was help reach these red number levels. On the right side, we have the mental traits. Whenever a mental damage is taken, these are the two traits that are affected: knowledge and sanity. Knowledge generally is used for specific trait rolls that might occur throughout a game. Sanity might be for specific trait rolls that might occur throughout the game. Might is generally used when attacking. And speed, the most important stat for this particular instance, is the number of moves that you can move up to in a course of a game. So, as we can see here, Joseph Brosev's starting movement speed is a speed of 4, meaning that he can move up to 4 spaces during his turn. If on the physical tiles themselves you can see that there are doors that are outlined by yellow, it means that that room can be explored in that direction. So Joseph Broseph could decide to move out of that room and to keep exploring, whether he decided to go to the upper landing, or at the entrance he could choose out of which of those two doors that he wants to explore. If Joseph Broseph wants to explore, he simply moves off into the space through the door in which he chooses. Inside of the actual stack of tiles, you're going to then decide which of the rooms that is going to come out. If the room that you grab doesn't apply to the floor that you're on, this starting area is the ground floor, then you simply move on from that tile and you place it off to the side and you keep going through the tiles until you find a tile with the floor that matches it. In which case, in this particular instance, we have a collapsed room. The way that rooms connect is that at least one door has to be connecting to the room that you are exploring. Therefore, this move right here cannot happen because no door is connected. Therefore, you could choose to connect the room like such, or you could connect it like this. Therefore, Joseph Broseph is inside of that room. Because there is no specific symbols to be indicated on here, there is, however, some text. You simply would then consult the text, do whatever it says that you are doing, and then that simply ends your turn. Because whenever you discover a room in Betrayal at House on the Hill, that simply ends your turn, regardless on if there's a symbol there or not. If an explorer happens to go to explore a room and it has a symbol on it, in addition to placing the room where a door connects, you then have to resolve the symbol on the space. Therefore, that swirl shows that is an event card. We draw the event card, and then we simply resolve it. Generally, when it comes to events inside a Betrayal at House on the Hill, a variety of different things are going to happen. But for the most part, it is going to have you make a certain kind of roll. Sometimes the event will specifically tell you to roll a certain amount of dice and give you results on what will happen on those specific rolls. Other times, it'll ask you to roll for a specific trait, meaning that everything that we had mentioned earlier, knowledge, might, speed, and sanity, could be affected, because not only do they play a role into how strong or weak you are, but they also determine the number of dice that you are going to roll on those specific trait rolls. So whenever you make a speed roll, you are going to roll the number of dice equal to your speed value at the time. If you make a might roll, you roll the number of dice equal to your might. If you roll a knowledge roll, you roll the amount of dice to knowledge, so on and so forth. So the more that you increase your stats, the more dice that you're able to roll, and the higher chances of something good happening to you. However, if on the bad side of things that you take damage in any of these traits, whether they be physical or mental, there are a couple things that have to happen. First, if it is a mental damage that is being taken, then depending on the number of damage, you can divide out the damage in total. Let's say that there was 4 mental damage taken. You can then divide it between your knowledge and sanity. Or you could have all of knowledge be hit, or you could have all of sanity be hit. As long as the 4 accumulated points of damage are distributed and used, it's fine. If on the physical side you take physical damage, then you can divide that up between your might and speed depending as you see fit. So you could do all might, you could do all speed, or you could do a little bit of both. It's entirely up to you in that regard. The final kind of damage, and the newest kind of damage inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill 3rd edition, is general damage. Whenever general damage happens, all that simply means is that you get to choose a trait and drop it down by that number. If a die roll of damage is what is required from you, you simply roll 1 die, and whatever result that you are able to acquire is the number of damage that you distribute, whether it be through your physical traits, your mental traits, or if it's general damage. So there's a chance that you could roll 0, which is nice, no damage for you. But otherwise, the die is your determining factor. Another new concept to Betrayal at House on the Hill in the 3rd edition is that instead of creating a discard pile for all events that you use up and eventually reshuffling them, there is a mechanic known as burying cards, which simply means that instead of creating a discard pile, you place the card that you used at the bottom of the deck, if it is able to be discarded in that manner. That generally only works for events and items, as omens are going to be the primary thing that you hold on to. If you discover a room tile that has a crow on it, that is the symbol of an omen coming into play. And this is going to be incredibly important, okay? So, the biggest change when it comes to Betrayal at House on the Hill is, of course, you still do the normal for any new players. You draw an omen card, you determine what the omen is, you read all of that, all the text, what it could do. But then, now is an important new mechanic that comes into this particular section of the tutorial. And that is the haunt rolls. Whenever omens are drawn, just to make it easier on yourselves, you're going to take the tracker, starting from 0, and you're going to move it up 1 for each omen that is ever drawn. Again, this also helps with the haunt rolls. And now, what a haunt roll entails is that you count the number of total omens held by all players, in which this first instance is only the first. But you count them all up. Once you do so, you roll that specific number of die, meaning that in this scenario, we're going to only roll 1. However, if you manage to get, in total, 5 or more on the dice, then the haunt will officially begin. Another important thing on the haunt tracker is that we could see that it goes all the way up to 9. If you manage to get lucky with your die rolls, you keep climbing, 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 you get to 8, and you still haven't started the haunt yet. If you draw that last omen and get to 9, then the haunt automatically begins regardless of whatever die roll you might be able to have. It starts automatically. While moving and exploring rooms is going to be the primary thing that you're trying to accomplish as a group at the early stages of Betrayal at House on the Hill, you do have other actions available to you. One of which is primarily exclusive to Betrayal at House on the Hill 3rd edition, is the special actions, which many items and omens are marked with the symbol that is this red one here. Each special action will tell you when and how it works. Special actions are always optional. You don't have to use the special actions, but you have the ability to use them if you see that you need to. Unless otherwise noted, you may only perform each special action once per turn, and you may perform each special action available to you, but you may not repeat them on your turn. Meaning that if we have multiple items that have special actions, I can't use this Rabbitfoot's ability twice. But I can use the Rabbit's Foot ability plus another ability if I see that I need to. However, you may not take a special action with any item or omen you did not have at the start of your turn. Meaning that if you get it via trade, or if you just drew the omen, you cannot use that on its same turn. If you and another explorer happen to be on the same tile, you also have the ability to trade items and omens with that specific explorer. The way that trading works is that once per turn, if you are on the same tile, you may change ownership of items and omens with that explorer, meaning that you may freely exchange any number of items and omens as long as you both agree to the trade, with only one very important condition. You cannot have given someone an item or an omen if you've already used its special action or attacked with it during that current turn. Meaning that if I, Brosif, wanted to give my rabbit's foot to Father Warren, I could not do it if I had used it in a prior roll before giving it to him. So that's something very important to keep in mind, whether you guys are all working currently together as a team during the exploration phase of the game, or whether it's during the haunt itself. Also, the trades don't have to be fair. The rules specifically state that as long as both players agree, you could do 1-for-1 trades, 2-for-1 trades, 3-for-1 trades, so on and so forth. Trade as much as you see fit, but that can only happen once during your turn. False features are things inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, to where if one door does not connect to another door, but is still legally connected, then that area is blocked off. In this current situation, Father Warren has explored a hallway and decided to connect the room like such, with the salon. He resolved the event and is legally connected to the house through that one door connection at the bottom. But because that other door does not connect to any other door, Father Warren does not have the ability from the salon to get inside of the primary bedroom. So after 7 omens in, Persephone has finally rolled 5 or higher with a 7. And now it is time to reveal the haunt. So, the way that it works is that now, instead of in previous editions where you had to go through a matrix of finding out, okay, this is the omen that was found, okay, this is the room that was found, so now we do this haunt. Now, the scenario card, you just flip it over, and we judge the traitor based on these specific requirements. So, in our example here, Persephone drew the holy symbol. So then we go down our list. We see holy symbol. The haunt number is the page inside of the game. And then it is determined by the traitor based on these bits of information. So in this particular instance, the haunt revealer is the person who had started the haunt, meaning that Persephone now is the traitor. However, there are a couple of other scenarios that offer different kinds of things that you guys should be aware about. Sometimes, depending on the haunt, you might get no traitor at all, meaning that everybody in the house is working as a team, and that they are generally working out of the Secrets of Survival book, meaning that they don't even need the traitor's tome to begin with, because they're all on the same team. In this particular scenario, however, there is one traitor, meaning that the traitor and the heroes are going to try to accomplish two different goals. The first team to achieve their goals is the winner. The other kind of haunts is that there is a hidden traitor. Sometimes in these haunt scenarios, the traitor's identity is not initially known to all players, and explorers are permitted to attack each other, because after all, anybody could be the traitor. Hidden traitor haunts are found in only Secrets of Survival, meaning you don't need the traitor's tome. Free for all means that in these haunts, it's every explorer for themselves. It's a contest between all players, and explorers are permitted to attack each other as they all try to achieve the same win condition. Unfortunately, not everyone can win. These haunts only appear in the traitor's tome. But in our specific instance, we have one traitor, and with a holy symbol, we go to haunt page 13 of both Secrets of Survival and the Traitor's Tome. The biggest difference with 3rd edition in comparison to 2nd edition is that with the way that the books are formatted, again, I'm going to go through this as best as I can without spoiling the haunts, because that's the beauty of this game. You generally, inside of your haunt books, you are going to have your haunt identification, which is going to be at the top. It's going to tell you what the name of the haunt scenario is, what number it is out of the 50 that is totally possible. It's helping you make sure that you're in the right place. Then it's going to have the introduction that's going to go right underneath it, where it's going to say indicate read first. It sets up the haunt stories for both the heroes and the traitor, which will be different for each side. There aren't any rules in this section, but there might be clues as to what the other side is up to. Kind of gives you an idea of maybe what they could be doing, any strategies that you're working with your team, or if you are the traitor itself, what you could be trying to do against the opponent. After which you read the introduction of that, and then you do the setup. Sometimes there's certain setup to where specific tokens may or may not come into play. You consult those, and then once the heroes have done their introduction and have done their setup, if they have any, and the traitor has done their introduction and their setup, if they've had any, the traitor will then leave the room, being completely out of earshot of the heroes, to where the traitor will be reading his tome to discover what his objective is and what all resources he might have available to him, depending on the haunt. And the heroes will be coming up with their strategy of how to achieve their win condition. One of the biggest things that completely changes this game is that all the heroes are trying to work together by giving as little information to the traitor as possible into what it is they're trying to accomplish. However, if at times there might seem to where there might be conflicting information in both tomes, to where certain moves might be critical, to where it might be critical to make that decision, or if it's really questionable, then either side can ask that question, and that traitor or survivor is then obligated to further explain what it is that they are doing. Generally meaning that the information is primarily secret until it is either asked or becomes crucial. So try to hold in as much information as you can to throw the traitor or the survivors off your trail. Then, other than that, that's pretty much it when it comes to that specific part. Sometimes there are more ways to become a haunt. Sometimes it'll be not just stat the revealer. Sometimes it will be stat based, to where it might be the highest sanity or the lowest knowledge or something like that. And then if that ends up happening, then the player closer to the haunt revealer in turn order will be the traitor. If haunt specifies that the traitor is the player to the left of the haunt revealer is specifically excluded from being the traitor. Sometimes, though, when it comes to haunts, there are variable player counts. You'll see in both the survival and the traitor's tome that you might see a number that shows 1, 5, 7, and 9 as sample values. If you see those slashes, that particularly means that that is going to vary the quantity of pieces based on the number of players that are in your game. The first number on the left is going to be accustomed for your 3-player game. The second number is for your 4-player game. Your third number is your 5-player game, and your last number is for your 6-player game. So those are all very important things to keep in mind. Also, other things is that inside of this phase, it is very possible for your character to die. But I've gone through a lot of information on just this single section, so let me go into further detail about what that all means. If you are the traitor, you will receive your traitor card, and these are all the rules regarding if you are the traitor. Your explorer is still in the game. You are the traitor. You are not required to draw an event card when you discover a tile with an event symbol. If you choose to draw an event card, you must resolve its effects. You do not take damage from tile effects, and the haunt will tell you how to win. Haunt scenario, you may or may not get monsters that are able to help you get closer and closer to completing your objective. Because 90% of the time, when it comes to Betrayal at House on the Hill, the haunt is either going to specify that you need to do a certain task, or you need to kill everybody else in the game. Monsters help you do either one of those two things. The way that they work is that they generally go immediately after the traitor takes his turn. And essentially just works as the traitor's secondary turn, but here's the more specifics of how a lot of these will apply. So, monsters are stunned when they take damage. To show that a monster is stunned, flip its token over. If a monster is stunned at the start of the monster turn, flip its token face up again. It will not act during that turn. At the start of the monster's turn, roll dice equal to the monster's speed. Each monster of that type may move up to as many tiles during their turn. Monsters are always permitted to move a minimum of 1 tile. Monsters may move between the ground floor staircase and basement landing tiles. Monsters attack using might unless the haunt says otherwise. Monsters may not hold items or omens. Monsters may not discover new tiles. Monsters do not take damage from the tile effects. Certain haunts may change any or all of these rules. So both of those reference cards are very important as the traitor to kind of give you an idea of what your abilities are in addition to the specifics that your haunt will indicate to you for what their abilities are and how it is all going to vary based on game-to-game basis. If you are a survivor, say you did not become the traitor this game, you have a couple of things that can prove very fruitful to you, as this is general rules stuff regarding what you can do best as far as surviving against the haunt. So here are some haunt tips. As you move from tile to tile, it takes 2 moves to leave a tile if enemies are in it. The monsters do have abilities to move in between tiles, so if you have very low speed, it's going to be more difficult to get away from them, as it's going to cost you more movement, in addition to maybe any other bonuses that you might have depending on the tile and the scenario. Also, a trade is normally done with permission, but if explorers have died, you may take one item or one omen without permission. Other trading rules still apply. Most haunts offer special actions for explorers to take. On your turn, check the haunt book for new special actions. You're going to want to do this quite frequently because remember, if you're a survivor, you're working with your team. You're going to be trying to work together against the traitor. And then, to attack an enemy on your tile, you and your target each make a might roll and compare results. The player with a lower number takes physical damage equal to the difference. Now, this does not specifically apply to just might rolls. Some haunts and some scenarios might attack your knowledge, might attack your speed, might attack your sanity. It all applies the same way. Just like how with trait rolls, there are certain number of dice based on your stats that you are rolling and consulting for results for, it applies the same way with those other kinds, with the main difference being if it's a knowledge or sanity, it takes mental damage based on the difference between the two. So if you lose a knowledge roll against the traitor or against a monster, then however the difference between your two scores is the amount of damage of mental damage that you're going to take. Sometimes there are certain things that might trigger general damage, which again, will allow you to choose any one of your 4 stats to drop based on the number of damage that you are going to take. Also, once the haunt begins, your explorer dies if any of their traits reaches the skull. If your might reaches the skull, you're dead. If knowledge reaches the skull, you're dead. If your speed reaches the skull, you're dead. If your sanity reaches your skull, you're dead. So you want to be constantly working with your team to make sure that all of those things are up, maybe get certain items that can help boost stats. It's all very important and very crucial if you're trying to complete your objectives. And with attacking explained, and with all of the tips that you will have both as the survivors and as the traitor and how monsters work, this is everything that is encompassed inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, 3rd edition. So overall, what do I think of Betrayal at House on the Hill 3rd edition? I think that in comparison to 2nd edition, it is way easier to understand. In fact, even the books themselves for the Secrets of Survivors and the Traitor's Tome make it very easy to follow. And I think that the actual scenario cards also make it way easier for finding out what haunts you're going to be playing during a game. The biggest thing that I enjoy the most about this game is the high level of replay value that you have. Because there are 50 different scenarios inside of Betrayal at House on the Hill, you're never going to play the same game twice. It's very, very unlikely that that is going to be the case. And even if you end up getting similar haunts happening more than once, your house layout is going to be completely different each time. So there might be rooms that might be more or less accessible in comparison to before. And like I said, there's 50 different scenarios. They all play differently. They all have the different categories of whether it's a hidden traitor game, whether it's a single traitor game, no traitor game, a free-for-all. There's so many different avenues that you can explore, and I think that it's just a great experience to have. So I definitely recommend this game if you're into the atmosphere of the game and you love games with high replay value, because this really is the game for that. But otherwise, if you have made it all the way through this video, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.